Alan, thanks again for joining us. I think for Jim and Robin on here today, we've known Alan, our team, for many years. Alan worked for quite a while at Collins Aerospace, and actually served as a board member for our economic development organization for many years, and helped us in many of our strategic planning initiatives over the years. So we've really enjoyed the opportunity to really kind of lean into Alan's leadership expertise in the various teams that he's led throughout his professional career, and now doing a little bit of this probably in a more fun way through his new kind of consulting company and video production company. And Alan, if you want to talk more about that, you're more than welcome to do so. So Alan, thanks for giving us a few minutes of your time this morning, and I'll let you take it from here.
Okay, good morning, everybody. So just to introduce myself a little bit, as Nick said, I spent 28 years in the global aerospace and defense business. I moved to Cedar Rapids just over 20 years ago. Collins Aerospace at the time told me it was going to be for a 2-year short stay and then back to Europe, but that didn't quite pan out that way. So I'm still here now, and we love it. But before that, I spent 14 years in the British Army, so I only really had 2 employers in my whole career. So that's been kind of fun. And in the last 18 months, I just opened up my own company here. The company's called Make It Memorable, and we really focus on 2 main areas. One's on the kind of the training consulting area, mainly focused in on business development, marketing, strategy, sales, and those kind of areas. And then the other part is the videography piece, which is kind of has always been a hobby of mine, and now I've got a little bit more time on my hands. I do quite a bit more of that work, and kind of tie those 2 things together in some of the things I'll talk about today on marketing, specifically marketing after the COVID-19. So the couple of things I want to talk about today. One, just a little introduction into a book. It's not my book by any stretch of the imagination. But it's all about accountability, and I think in today's environment, we can easily get into this kind of pity party area, and complain about what's happening to us, or we can take ownership. And there's a really good book that I want to share with you. That's a good read. It's probably about 10 or 12 years old, but it talks about accountability, and I'll talk a little bit about how to be accountable for your marketing success. And then I want to talk a little bit about the importance of understanding your new value proposition. Whether you're a small business or a large business, it really doesn't matter. You need to really understand what your value proposition is, and whatever your value proposition was in January, it's probably different today, as our customers have kind of changed what they're up to and how they're thinking. So I'll give you some thoughts about how to think about your value proposition, and then really talk about this whole marketing piece, and based on what you're trying to achieve through your marketing will drive the behaviors you need to implement. So with that, I'm going to try and share my screen. So this is, oh, okay. It says the host is disabled screen sharing.
That's no fun. Well, still saying that, huh?
Oh, now I've got it. There we go. So hopefully you can see that now.
There we go. Yep.
So here, this is the book. It's called The Oz Principle, and it's a fairly easy read. It's actually focused in on the Wizard of Oz. It talks about the 4 main characters in the Wizard of Oz and how they had the ability to solve their own problems. They're all off to go see the wizard to get their problem solved, but in fact, they all had the ability to solve their problems themselves. So it uses that kind of theory, and you'll see there in the middle, this is kind of the I'm telling you the end of the story here, but it really talks about, you see the black line in the middle, it's the, they call it the line, and your accountability can be either above the line or below the line. And below the line is kind of that whole pity party kind of area where you can, blame the circumstances, and you, you're dealt the hand you're dealt with, and you can't do anything about it. Or you can decide to be above the line, and that's where they get into this see it, own it, solve it, do it kind of approach to drive your own destiny. And I really like the way they talk about accountability, and I put it down the bottom there. It's a personal choice to rise above one's circumstances and demonstrate the ownership necessary to achieve the key results. And I think where we are today, really, I mean, it is a personal choice of how you're going to go deal with that. And so that with that in mind, is how we're going to think about our marketing. Let me just come back on here. Stop sharing for a minute. So how are we going to think about our marketing? And I want, most people or most companies have some sort of marketing playbook. As you put your year together, you put your marketing plan together, whether it's in a plan or a playbook, whichever. But pretty much, if you started your playbook in January and you were set up for your year, I can pretty much tell you to throw that away. Whatever, for most companies, most organizations, whatever was in the playbook has significantly changed, and you need to rethink through that whole process. If you think about many companies, especially small businesses, a lot of us are in kind of a survival mode. We've gone from trying to increase profits to how do we keep our costs down. And many companies, large or small, will look at their marketing budget as a place to go to save money in the short term. And I'll give you some thoughts about that, and why that's probably not a good idea today. But also, longer term, how that kind of have impacts on you. So, and I think there's marketing that can be done, and I'll give you some examples of it that doesn't really cost a lot. So, and it comes down to sometimes just time and effort. And as small businesses, as things have quietened down, one of the things we do have is time. So that might be an opportunity to up your marketing today with minimal cost. But job number one is to go figure out what your new value proposition is. And I always think about value proposition in a pretty simple way here. Let me share the screen again. Here we go. So here you can see it's this pretty simple Venn diagram, and you've got your customer, your company, and your competitor, and the area that I've highlighted there is really your value proposition. That's something that your customer wants or needs that only you provide. And it's really, really important to go figure out what that is, and it changes over time. And as you do well in the marketplace, your competitors are going to come after you and look at making that value proposition piece smaller and smaller. But also our customers will change, and and what they want and how they need it will change, and that's you got to keep looking at that. And if you so I highlighted the value proposition area there. That's something that you have that your customers really want and only you have. But you look at the other segments there, the little triangle in the middle, obviously that's something your customers want, but you and your competitors both provide. There's areas there, if you look on the left-hand side, that segment there between the customer and the competitor, that's actually things that the customers want that you don't provide. So those are areas that you may want to think about. How do I fix that gap that I have there? And then there's other things that you and your competitors have, which is a section on the right-hand side that the customer really doesn't care about. So not to worry too much about those things. So job number one is to go figure out what your value proposition is. What it was in January and what it is today may be the same. It may be different. And and once you understand what your value proposition is, then you can really start to look at addressing some of your actual marketing strategies. So I'm going to stop sharing that a minute. Okay, so other things to think about. So obviously figure out what your new value proposition is, but also think about, you know, where you're going to market. And now's if you're not online, if you don't have a good web page, if you don't have, you know, good social media content, those sorts of things, now is probably a pretty good time to do that pivot to digital. If you think about it, uh, we used to go to trade shows, exhibitions, those sorts of things. Those aren't going to happen anytime soon here. And even if they do happen, who's going to turn up? So, you know, there's a, you know, people that are going to be, you know, concerned with the risks of doing things like that. So moving to more of a digital storefront is something that's, you know, probably the right time to go do that. And if you think about your customers are, you know, we're all spending a lot more time at home. We're spending a lot more time online. We're consuming huge amounts of digital media, whether it's, you know, online, on the TV, whatever. And you've got to figure out how we actually stand out in that. So it's a good time to update your website. If your website's getting stale, it's a good time to get that done, whether it's photos, videos, those sorts of things. And then, you know, if you can create a digital channel to actually have your customer, beyond what your product or service is, obviously, but if you can have a digital channel where people can actually buy online with, you know, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, that's also, you know, having these shoppable landing pages will be very beneficial for you. The other things to think about and talk about in your marketing is if you're providing any, you know, new services, you know, like providing services direct to your customers' front door. That's the, you know, Amazon are really successful at Uber Eats, or, you know, are doing really well right now because they deliver things to the door. But I've seen local companies that also offer that, you know, you can buy it online and I'll deliver it to you, you know. Think about flexible payment terms in your marketing approach. I've seen something online where Ford are offering like 6 months relief on payments if you've lost your job due to COVID. You know, they're obviously focused. Their marketing is looking on, you know, what's their story going to be after the event. You know, they were compassionate, those sorts of things. They understand that people were hurting, but it's a great marketing tactic for them to use. As I said, part of my business is doing wedding videos, and you know, a lot of the weddings are getting postponed, cancelled, moved, and thinking about, you know, where people are right now, I typically ask for like 1/3 payment to actually secure the date. Well, times are hard for people, and so providing them flexibility in those payments is getting that business secured, which is the most important thing right now, is getting new business secured, but being a little bit more flexible on how they're actually paying. So those are some of the things to think about. If you've got you know, brick and mortar facilities, in your marketing playbook, you need to think about how your customers are going to interact with you. You know, can you provide, you know, touchless points of sale? Can you you know, they use credit cards and there's no need to sign anymore. Those sorts of things are things you can talk about in your marketing. I've seen organizations where they have 2 bins with pens in. One bin is sanitized, the other is used. So if you have to sign for something, you're getting a clean pen and put it into the used bucket. I've seen companies where you hand over your credit card, they swipe the credit card, they sanitize the credit card and give you it back. So those are all sorts of things to think about as you're interacting with your customer and talking about in your marketing. As people, you know, a lot of people are interested today in about how can I safely interact with other companies. And the other thing to think about, just from a marketing perspective and communication wise, is how well are you prepared with your supply chain? Is your supply chain solid, strong? Are they in good shape too, or are they hurting? So if you've got a good, solid supply chain, then that's something to talk about in your marketing. A lot of us, you know, we are our supply chain. We do the whole thing, but there's others that are more reliant on supply chain. So having a good supply chain and communicating that is something to think about in your playbook.
Hey, Alan, let me just follow up on something you just said about the little things once a customer is inside a business. And I think this applies to, all the way from your small retail shops to your, larger industry that still has customers that need to come in and out. It's those, I think there's so much about this recovery that, employers are having to think about this. Businesses that have customers need to be thinking about this. It's the wide spectrum of, I'll call it fear factor of customers, right? So like, let's just use the easy example of a restaurant, just because, so many of those are opening, here this week, and some still contemplating whether it's the right time or not. I might get comfortable as a customer with the idea of going to a restaurant, or going to pick up food and take it home. So I've overcome that fear factor of doing that before I even go. But then when I go, the touchless payment things, the way that your employees are demonstrating that they're going out of their way to provide that comfortable experience for customers, all of these visual cues, like, I think customers are at a point where they're going to constantly be looking for reasons to make them uncomfortable. And does that make sense? But what you can do as a business owner to constantly be looking at all facets of how that experience has been recreated to help those customers be comfortable. I think those are the businesses that will come out further ahead. And I think some of those examples you gave are just perfect examples of probably the many things that folks need to be thinking about.
Yeah.
Can I add to that really quick?
Okay.
So I opened back up my studio Saturday, and yesterday I watched as a lady and her two kids, probably 8, 9 years old, they all got out of the car, they all put their masks on perfectly, they walked up to the door, we had the door open, and they came in, and I didn't have a mask on because it was just me in there. Anyway, they came in and they started looking around, and the first thing that these kids said to me were, "Do we have to wear these masks in here?" And I said, "It is totally up to you. You're not going to offend me if you don't. It's okay if you don't." And they were like, zhit, off as fast as they could get them off. So that was just interesting, I guess, Nick, what you were just saying, because how do you there's no way to make everybody happy. By me not having a mask, the next person could come in and be like, well, why isn't she wearing a mask? And then, not stay. It is going to be such a fine line to walk.
It will definitely keep people on their toes for a long time as you cater towards people that are all in different places when it comes to the behaviors that make them want to continue or do business with whoever it might be.
Yeah. And where I'm at is you need to be actively telling people what the experience is going to be like with your company right now, whether that's people that have been coming to you for 50 years or people that are going to walk through your door for the first time. It's always, I think right now it'd be really helpful to let people understand what the experience is going to be like. And it's a great way within your marketing to do that. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through here. I do want to, every time I think about marketing, I always go back to Anzoff's matrix, because it all depends on what you're trying to achieve with your marketing to what you need to actually go do. And so if you haven't seen Anzoff's matrix, here it is. And you can see on the left-hand side there, it's the customer, whether they're existing or new. And on the bottom there is your products or services, and again, whether they're existing or new. And the color coding on there is just a kind of an indicator on the level of complexity and difficulty to market and get them to buy more or buy something from you for the first time. So obviously existing customers, existing products, that's relatively simple. The most difficult is if you're going to new customers and new products or services. So as you look at that matrix, and we'll talk about each of one of those boxes, you need to adjust your marketing strategies accordingly. So let me come back here. So let's talk about the bottom left-hand corner first, the green box. And this is existing customers that have already done business with you. So they know your products and services. They've already made the decision to buy from you. It's just how do you retain them or get them to buy more? So as I was saying right at the beginning, now's not a good time to be silent in your marketing. As I said, some people, the first thing they cut is their marketing budget. Well, I think especially in the environment we're in right now, that's not a good idea, because people are going to start to ask the question of themselves: are they closed for good? People have been shut for a while. Some people are going to come out of this, and some people aren't. And so, if you're silent in the marketplace as well, that's going to put up the question marks about whether you're actually sustainable or not. So it's a good time to get active. Social media is a good way to go do that. It's relatively cheap to go do that. Most of the time it's time and effort. And even if you use some of their adverts, they're actually pretty cost competitive to put ads out there. And again, as we were just talking about, what you want to be telling your customers now is how to interact with your company. Operational changes. Michelle just talked about, our doors are open, right? You don't even have to touch the door handle to get into the store anymore. The door's open. Here's our new hours. Here's the amount of hours we're working. And things like, do I need to wear a mask or not? I actually finally got to the hairdresser this week. Yee-hee! So it's good news. But they require masks, and they advertise that. And so those sorts of things are simple marketing techniques to go implement. And then, what are the processes and procedures? And as we talked about, most people are looking for the customer experience, what it's going to be, and people want it to be clean and they want it to be assured. That's what folks are looking for right now. The other marketing strategy, which doesn't cost anything, is just to reach out to your existing customers and ask them how they're doing. There's a lot of things been going on in the environment right now, and how they've been impacted by COVID. How are they? How's their business getting influenced? What are their buying habits? What's happening in their environment? And just a simple phone call, and have a chat with them, see what's going on, and just listen. And when you do that, you'll start to hear that some companies are actually doing really, really well. They've had very little impact, and other companies have been absolutely devastated. So just going through there, but it's another way of getting your message out there that you're still in business, you still care, and that's the easiest place to do more sales is with people that have already bought from you. And the other strategy that I like to use here is to stay visible and relevant. And those are things like whether it's blogs, vlogs, social media, those sorts of things, putting posts out there. And I'll tell you, one of the great examples I'm using here about somebody's or an organization staying relevant is Medco. Just look what you guys are doing during this COVID. You're taking the important information from several sources, you're aggregating it together and then putting it out to our members in a single location that's very easy to navigate. You're doing meetings with key members of the local community and sharing that information. And that's you guys could have easily just gone we're not, economic development's not going to happen in this environment, yada yada yada. It'd be very easy to go do that, but you chose not to. So those are some of the ways to think about keeping relevant. I've been thinking about doing the vlog since I opened my company 18 months ago, and never really had time, never really got around to it. And so this gave me some time, and I launched these vlogs on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn by itself is, if you understand some of the different social medias, they're hungry for video right now. You know, at my company, we produce videos, you know, we do training. So we kind of combine those two things together into a blog that we put out. And I put 3 out so far. I've got another one coming. And the first one I did was on remote management and remote leadership, because a lot of people for the first time were actually going to be leading people in a remote environment. You know, they could walk down to other people's offices or areas where they're working and do that leadership training and interactions. Well, now it was all very, very remote. And I just broke it down very simply into, you know, the 3 pieces, which is all about people, processes, and tools. And just broke it down and how to think through the new environment you're working in. Well, it was, I mean, I'm up to, I think, well over 4,000 views of that video. So for me, as a, you know, little company here in Marion, I'm getting views all over the world from that thing. So it's a good way to stay relevant. It's a good way to get your message out there. And and it doesn't, I mean, it was time and effort at the end of the day. So let's talk about the now moving to the area where you're taking your existing products to new customers. So this, you know, they have, you know, the customer here hasn't had the opportunity to actually experience buying from you, so it's kind of new. And so one of the areas here to leverage is your existing clients, you know, and getting testimonials, getting them up on your website, getting them up onto your digital storefront, on Google, all the places you can get them to, anybody to write a review about how it's been to interact with you will be uh, very good in this piece of your marketing. But also, if you can look on how to tie your product or service back to the pandemic, is also a really good strategy right now. And you just watch the TV tonight. I encourage you to, you know, typically I switch off when I'm looking at the advertisements between what I'm watching, but this now's a really good time as you think about your own marketing to watch some of that and see the strategies that people are using. One of the ones I really liked was WeatherTech, you know, the company that produced these nice flooring mats that you put in your vehicles. And it was all about, you know, you didn't get your carpets dirty, you know, it dealt with all the snow and water and all that happens as you get in and out your vehicle. Well, they've pivoted now onto how easy it is to clean those floors and how you can spray them with disinfectant and those sorts of things. So they've tied what was their existing product or service back into the pandemic. Michelob Ultra, another one. You know, they're now talking about. You know, they always had. You know, their adverts were always around. You know, social gatherings of people that had just worked out, and now they're pivoting around. You know, this is the drink to have after you worked out at home. So it's interesting to watch those things. The other one, you know, Cologuard is another one that's really stepped up their marketing. These are, you know, you do the colon screening at home, and these are really playing to those people that actually need that screening done but don't want to go to the hospital because of the risks. And so they've really amped that up and talked about how you don't have to go do the hospital visit to go get the same thing. Sylvan Learning, they're promoting their, you know, online schooling, you know, as some of the schools are closed and not doing, and they're all worried. Everybody's worried about learning loss. They've amped up their game around COVID and providing that learning. And who would have thought about, you know, you can buy in. That's my son, by the way. He's at school. Sorry, it's not me sneezing. But you know, if you would have thought about buying a car, brand new car from a dealership, and never actually going to the dealership. You know, the first time you see the vehicles is delivered on your driveway. So people are really adapting and changing the way they're going to market and tying it back to the COVID environment that we're in. So think about your messaging and adjusting it accordingly to the current environment. And that's why I said, you know, make sure you understand what your value proposition is now, which is probably different than January, and adjust your messaging, which again is probably different than what it was in January. And again, the whole pivot to digital, if you're not on the digital, that's where you need to be today, because that's where people are doing the majority of their shopping is on online. As I mentioned before, part of our business is this wedding videography, and we would go to wedding expos, and there'd be, you go to a wedding expo, and there'd be 100 or more brides at that expo, and so you can get in front of them really easily and get your brand known and show them what you can do. Well, those things aren't going to happen anytime soon. So you got to figure out where your customers are, and most of the brides now are online, and they're using services like Wedding Wire, The Knot, those sorts of places. And so I've gone away and opened storefronts on those platforms to again keep the brand in front of the customer, where they're actually at now, and been really successful in that process. So think about where your customers are and then adjust.
Can I interject really quick? So Dustin is not on here. Alan, I don't know if you've met Dustin Kern from our.
Yeah, I know Dustin.
His wife actually invited me to her model home. She sells kind of the model home, or works at the model home for Skogman. And she had kind of her open house last Saturday, and we came and brought some pottery. But what was interesting was she was saying how she really doesn't need to be at this model home, and how, I hope she's okay with me sharing this, but she's had the greatest month ever, and it's all been virtual and online. And I think that whoever would have thought that that would be the case. Like, I just think it will be so interesting moving forward how, not everybody obviously, but some of these companies that I think thought, like a realtor or like a model home situation, that they would have to have somebody sitting there for hours at a time waiting for people to come to them, when they could be just as successful, if not more, doing this kind of virtual type selling. Anyway, just a little tidbit that she added. When you're being successful, not even being in front of that bride, and who would have thought?
Yeah, but I'm in front of them virtually now rather than in person, which is really interesting. And I think, little aside here, but I think that this whole few months that we're going through is going to fundamentally change the way people do business. I think brick and mortar facilities, people are working from home and productivity rates are up. There's just a whole bunch of things that are going to happen in the environment that's going to change based on these few months that we've experienced. People who wanted to work from home, it was their leader that had to get comfortable with them working from home. And now they've experienced it and see that it can actually work. I think that's going to be a trend going forward. And the beauty from a leadership perspective is it really opens up the market from where you can pull new people from, because once you're virtual, you can be global, in fact, and have people working on, whether it's software, whatever, 24 hours a day. So big changes. So that was taking new products. That was taking existing products to new customers. And now the piece where you're taking existing customers and you're bringing them new products is pretty similar to the green box, in that you already know who the customer is. They already experienced buying from you. You're just offering them new capabilities. And again, the same strategies work here. The personal check-in with them again to see how they're doing, and listen to what they're telling you, the areas that they're struggling in, and then think about the products and services that you provide that can actually fill those gaps or needs. Nobody knows your products and services better than you do. So have those conversations and listen in and be acute to that. And I'm not saying these are sales calls necessarily. They're information gathering calls, and then think about it a little bit, and then maybe going back and saying, hey, you were discussing last week about X. Have you thought about doing this? Those sorts of things. So those are good things. Again, staying relevant. The blogs, the the check-ins, the things like Medco are doing to keep in front of the membership or your customers. But also think about what else you can provide them with the capabilities that you've already got. Nice story about Fuddruckers. You know, if you've been to the Fuddruckers restaurants, they're pretty good. They bake their own bread. Well, they figured out that there's a shortage of bread, and they started selling bread direct to consumer just because the market had changed on them. You know, you've seen many of the liquor companies, they pivoted onto selling hand sanitizer, or some are donating it, some are selling it. You know, so they looked at what was going on in the marketplace and how could they provide more services and capability and communicate about it. And then the last area is the kind of the new products and new customers. And this is obviously the hardest place to be successful, and as you don't have a relationship with the customer, and you really haven't, you know, you haven't got testimonials on your products. So it's kind of, that's, you know, the hardest place to launch right now. And many companies have kind of put a hold on going into these new markets right now based on just the environment that's currently in place. But you know, wherever there's that kind of downside, there's always an opportunity, because there's not many new products coming into the marketplace. So if you've got a new product or new capability that you can bring to the marketplace that is you know, really beneficial today, the marketplace is less crowded with new products, so you actually may get more visibility. So that's something to think about in your marketing strategy. And some of the companies that have been successful with that are companies like Tesla. You know, Tesla making the ventilators, you know, Apple doing face masks, are examples of companies that have kind of pivoted a little bit and getting that information out there. A lot of, you know, people are working out at home. Companies like Tenzing, they launched a new energy drink around working out at home. ASICS, you know, the shoe manufacturer, are launching new training shoes for, you know, and they're very focused in on working out at home and those sorts of things. So that's kind of areas to think about. And then the other area that people are, you know, launching new products to new customers are around the homeschooling, around family activities, those sorts of things. You know, I already mentioned about Sylvan and what they're trying to do with the learning loss, but if you're familiar with a company called Flags of Valor, they're a company that produce these like wooden flags, and they use veterans to actually build them. It's the whole company's made up of veterans and those sorts of things. Well, they launched a new product for kids to build a flag at home, and it's a little kit that, you know, they sell online, and it's a family activity to go build the flag. So again, you know, you can launch new products and services in this environment, but it's actually not the easiest thing to do. But still, it depends on what you want to do from a marketing perspective. So that's the hands-off matrix and the 4 areas and things to think about depending on what you're trying to do in the marketplace. But whenever you're, you know, thinking about and thinking through your marketing strategies and your playbook, you need to keep true to your brand. It's really important to think through that. Last month, Patty Sada was on. And one of the things I took away from that I really liked was, you know, she talked about in these situations of adversity, you know, what's your story going to be, you know, coming out of it, and what you want your story to be. And I think as you relook at your marketing playbook, that's something you need to keep in mind. Some people have had some problems along the way. In the UK, KFC, you know, Kentucky Fried Chicken, they got slammed just because their advertising didn't change. And in the UK, they talk about their chicken being finger licking good. Well, imagine how well that's kind of going down. And the authorities actually condemned them for being insensitive at this sort of time. So obviously that's a little bit of a fail on their behalf. But those are some of the things you need to think about your marketing messages. Do they still make sense in today's environment? And how do you want your story to look like as you come out the other side of this? If you look at customer retention, some of the strategies that people are using are, providing special discounts. If you look at the cell phone companies, the internet companies, those sorts of things, they're not charging overage charges right now because they know people are at home using and consuming more data than they ever used to. And so that, people like that, obviously. Who would have thought vehicle insurance companies would give you a rebate because there's less people on the road? Again, they're trying to provide a message for you coming out of this whole process. So think about, what you do and how you market, how that's going to impact your brand and how you're going to perceive in the long term. And the other thought about it is today a lot of people are focused on being seen to be compassionate. And again, watch your TV adverts and watch, and there's ones out there that are not pushing their products or capabilities right now, but they're showing compassion. And in Brazil, I still got some good friends in Brazil, and they were telling me that McDonald's, with their iconic golden arches, have actually split the golden arches so that an individual arch, and they're showing social distancing. So it's kind of an interesting strategy they're using. I saw Rocket Mortgage. They've got adverts out right now, basically essentially thanking the essential services. And then Cisco, they've got some ads going on right now where they talk about adversity came to town, and they're talking about how their distribution services are actually helping. So as you're just watching TV, let's think about if you think about the Ansoff Matrix and their brand strategies, just watch the adverts that are going on and see how people are actually thinking about how to market their products and capabilities in this environment. It's quite interesting. So that's kind of what I had. I think we started off with the book, the Oz Principle, and I think we can become accountable and be responsible for our own marketing, especially in this small business environment, and how we work through that. Stay above the line. Don't get into the pity party piece, and the see it, own it, solve it, do it is a good process to go through. It's a good read. It's pretty quick. And then just think about how you're going to market and stay true to your brand. So with that, Nick, any questions? Or
yeah, when you go back to that, I went back to the beginning of my notes. I wrote down that accountability is a personal choice.
Yeah.
To rise above one's circumstances. I think that's pretty powerful and probably more relevant than ever.
Yeah.
Especially when we find ourselves. I mean, even as you look here at the screen, our team is spread out in various locations. How much that personal choice thing plays in, maybe more than ever, because we're all like kind of torn apart from our teams, right? So yeah, good stuff, Alan. Thank you very much for your time and thought here this morning. There's a few people on the line here. Does anybody have any questions or comments or thoughts that they want to throw out at Alan?
I'll just throw out one thing. So I really liked your the observation about how a lot of the advertisements that you see either online or on television have changed, have pivoted. And I'm doing an international marketing class for Mount Mercy right now in their accelerated program, and that's practically every subject area. We've come back to the changes that have happened since the virus really hit the U.S. and how quickly companies have pivoted.
Yeah, the ones that I think that are going to do okay have pivoted. There's others that are just sitting back and waiting to see what's going to happen to them.
Yeah.
So
I think it's we're doing a webinar later today that kind of gets into a little bit more of the legal and HR perspectives of all these decisions that companies need to be thinking about, in addition to the marketing side of things. And it's interesting when you hear some thoughts and read newspaper articles about what the new norm is. And for companies and businesses that aren't considering whether it be some of these marketing things that you've talked about here this morning, the strategic planning playbook side of things, or the HR legal things, which we're not really getting into here today with this session. If there are folks that are just operating under the pretense that, oh, we get 3 or 4 months out from this, things will return to normal, they're selling themselves short, I believe. I mean, I think we need to continue to be nimble, continue to think forward, but think forward in a way that acknowledges that we have to in some ways let go of what business was like in the past. Yeah. Even if we ultimately return to that sooner than later, it can be a dangerous mindset to just, like you were saying, Alan, just grab that playbook, assume it's all relevant, and continue to charge through. Even if we do land there, it's a really dangerous mindset to have, especially in this time of things almost changing daily. Yeah. Anybody else have anything for Alan this morning? All right. Oh, Michelle, sorry, did I interrupt you?
No, I was just going to thank Alan for popping in. It's always good to hear from him.
Yeah.
I appreciate it, guys.
Cool. Thank you, Alan. We really appreciate your time, and thanks for those of you who joined us this morning.